Perfect. Alrighty, guys, I will share my screen and we can go ahead and get started. So nailing the interview. This is probably going to be one of our most valuable presentations that we do. I think as just coming out of the program, I think it's everyone's kind of biggest hesitation is just interviewing in general. So the behavioral side of it, the technical side of it, interviews are always a little bit nerve-wracking. So hopefully we're going to give you some good tips today that you can work on even in labs. Just when you're doing mock interviews with Brian, just make sure you're using some of these things too. So a typical interview timeline and process. So this is, and it'll be different probably for everyone, but for the most part, they usually will send you an invitation email. Sometimes they'll give you a call and say, hey, let's set up an interview. That's always like the most exciting feeling. Or they might even text you now with all of our new technology that we have. So either way, they'll call you, make sure you're setting up the interview time. In this portion of it, when you're setting up your initial interview, make sure you're asking questions. So who am I going to be speaking with? What are we going to be covering? Make sure you ask those valuable questions. You need to know that so you can prepare for your interview the best way possible. So usually it'll be either a phone screen or an in-person behavioral interview after that. That's kind of the first round of, oh, does somebody have a question?
Alrighty. Bye.
Okay, guys, make sure you're on mute. Okay, so usually the first interview will be behavioral type interview. So this is more of a casual conversation. They're usually going to ask you about basically your background, probably a little bit more about what you've been doing for the last few months, etc. So it's not going to be a super in-depth interview right off the bat normally. After that, if they like the vibe that you're giving, you answer some of the questions properly, obviously, they'll bring you in for a technical assessment. So this could either be anything from them sending you home with like a do-at-home project over the weekend, or they'll bring you in for an actual technical interview, which is usually like a whiteboard type interview. You're going to do a lot of code, a Hackerronk challenge. There's so many different ways they can send you a technical assessment. So usually it's the behavioral first, then the technical. And then usually they'll have like maybe one or two other interviews where you're just coming in to meet with the team. At that point is kind of when you should kind of know that you're expecting an offer, because if you're meeting with the team, they're just kind of doing their final wrap-ups. Like this is the team you're essentially going to be working with. But also remember that when you are meeting with this potential team, you're trying to still impress them. You're going to be working with them. If you give off a bad vibe or anything like that, they could potentially kind of cut that interview process, and then you won't get the offer. So after that is usually when you get a verbal offer. If the team really liked you, you guys vibe very well, you'll usually get a verbal offer. Sometimes they'll send you like a document or just give you a verbal offer, like, hey, take a look at it. This is important, you guys, and we'll get to this later with the offer negotiations presentation, but never accept an offer right off the bat, right on the phone. Always ask for some time to think about it. You can either use like I would like to talk to my friends or family about it excuse, or thank you so much, I really just want to take a look at it. Just want to make sure everything is right. Whatever you use as like the reason, you always make sure they're giving you time. Nobody should really ever ask you to give a verbal agreement right over the phone. If they do though, if they're pressuring you to do that, you can always just tell them like, I need some time to think about it. I need to talk to my family, my friends. And they should be giving you some time. If they don't, and they're really pressuring you to do that, that's kind of shady. Obviously you're going to be talking to your career coach. So we'll be able to help you with that, kind of assess the situation. But after the verbal offers, when you do the offer negotiation, so that amount of time, whatever amount of time you tell them or the amount of time they give you, is when you're looking over the offer, making sure everything looks good, working with your career coach to start your offer negotiations, everything like that. And then you'll get the written offer, and that's when obviously you'll know your start date, all the information that goes around you actually starting and onboarding. Cool. So for behavioral interviews, so usually when you think about arriving early, for some reason, everyone used to tell us to arrive like an hour early to 2 hours early to interviews. Please don't do that. So you want to try to arrive probably about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a little bit earlier for your interview. If you arrive super early, like 2 hours early, you're pretty much just going to be like sitting in the lobby and making the receptionist feel uncomfortable, or like making the interviewer feel like they need to rush. You don't want to do that. You don't want to give a bad first impression. So get there early, but try to get there around 20 to 15 minutes early. If you do get there super early, just on accident or just because you feel like you need to get there, don't just go and sit in the waiting room or just talk to the receptionist or whatever. Go walk around, get your head right, sit in your car, listen to hype music, do what you need to do, but don't just show up and just hang out at the receptionist area, because you're going to feel like they're going to feel like you're rushing them, and you don't want to do that. And then, so make sure you have your resume prepared. A few of you have asked me, should you bring your resume to an interview? Most likely they're already going to have your resume in hand, but I would always just bring a couple of extra copies of your resume with you. So either like in a briefcase or in a purse, portfolio, however you want to bring it. Obviously you don't want to bring like a big giant stack of papers, but just bring like a couple extra resumes just in case. You never know, especially if they're like, oh, do you have a resume in hand? Then you're going to feel bad if you don't have one. So always just bring a couple just in case, have it prepared. You don't necessarily need to have it in front of you during a face-to-face interview, but during a phone interview, you can have your resume in front of you. That way you can reference things, just make sure you're in the right place when they're talking about certain things. But anything that's on your resume is fair game. So just remember that. They can ask you anything on your resume. So it's always good to have kind of your resume there to remember what you put on your resume. And then for answering interviews questions. So we have kind of talked about this before, but and I will harp on this all the time, but the STAR method is what I'm talking about when I say always answer a problem or a negative or an obstacle with some kind of result or solution, or a positive. So that's what basically the STAR method is: situation, task, action you took, results achieved. That's how you want to structure all of your answers. Anytime that an interviewer is asking you a question, try to answer as directly as possible using this method. So you're not trying to just give them a bunch of fluff. You're telling them what the issue was, how you fixed it, or what your obstacle was, how you overcame it. And even in a behavioral interview, they'll ask you some behavioral questions where you have to kind of answer with a negative, the strengths and weaknesses question. What are your weaknesses? You have to kind of give them a weakness, but always follow up with a positive after that, or how you're working on it. The tell me about yourself question. So you will get this in almost every single interview that you do, pretty much. And they'll ask you in so many different ways. Oh, so tell me a little bit about your background, or tell me about yourself, things like that. So they'll ask you in different ways, but the tell me about yourself question is usually the first thing that they ask you. When you're answering this question, think about your elevator pitch that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Elevator pitch is past, present, future. You're trying to keep it under about 90 seconds. Essentially, your past is what your background is, what you were doing before you found engineering or became an engineer. Your present is the why. So when I say why you became an engineer, an answer like, I really like solving problems, is not the right answer. You're trying to be as specific as possible. I really want to be an engineer because I realized like certain processes that I was doing beforehand could be automated. I wanted to learn how to do that. Be as specific as possible. You're explaining why you did this shift, because most of you are doing some kind of shift from a background that's not super technical to now you're an engineer. So you want to explain the why. And then the future portion, you're going to know your audience at this point. Like, you know who you're interviewing with. You should be doing research on the company. Your future portion is very much catered to the audience you're working with. So for example, your future is trying to rope in your background, so your past and your present, your engineering skills. So whatever your background skills were, your present skills are now trying to utilize that to be working in this company, whoever you're talking to. So just make sure you cater your future portion, like what you want to do, to that company. And this is a good opportunity to bring in kind of different, unique facts about whatever company you're talking to. You always want to show that you've been doing research. So if it's a fintech company and they're going to be getting into cryptocurrency, you can say something along the lines of, I want to use my finance background with now my new technical skills, and really kind of dive deep into your cryptocurrency program that you guys are going to be starting. You're showing off your skills, you're showing off your background skills, and you're also showing that you did research on the company. You know what kind of projects they have coming up. That's super impressive. So past, present, future for that question. Anytime you get stuck on the tell me about yourself question, because it is always weird to kind of talk about yourself, past, present, future, just think about it that way. And describing your best self. So again, any opportunity you have to hype up your technical skills. I talked to some of you about this already, but anytime that you can hype up your technical skills in any way, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to impress the people you're talking to. Even if it's a behavioral interview, even if they're not really asking about anything technical, you can still throw some technical things in there. Talk about a project. And if you do talk about a project, always talk about your individual contribution as well as the actual project. You're trying to hype your own self up, not the whole team. So just make sure anytime you can, you're kind of throwing in some technical knowledge. Even if it's like an HR person, they're still going to be impressed. Half the time when you guys are talking, I'm like, oh, wow, that sounds cool. And you could be saying something that doesn't even make sense. But they're listening for buzzwords, always listening for buzzwords. Anything that was in the job description is fair game. If you want to bring something, like if React was in the job description, talk about React. You're trying to impress them. Practice. So you guys are going to have an activity after this, and we're going to have you guys set up some mock behavioral interviews with your career coach, each individual career coach. They're going to be about 30 minutes long. We're going to ask you just some general behavioral questions and give you feedback and record them for you. It's going to be weird, but I want you guys to go back and watch them and practice your answers. We're going to give you feedback. We're telling you the things that you should be trying to answer, tips on how to answer things. Use that. Practice. The more times you do it, the easier it's going to get. And even you guys are going to have your first interview. A lot of you are going to be nervous and it's going to feel really weird and it may not go as well as you want it to. But the more you do these interviews, the easier it gets. You're answering the same way essentially to all of these behavioral questions. So just keep practicing. It will get so much easier, I promise. So for Lambda School, one of the things that we have noticed over working with all the different classes is that everyone kind of explains Lambda School a little bit differently. A lot of your interviewers are going to ask you about Lambda School because for most of you, you either have it in experience or you'll have it in education. You have it somewhere on your resume. So most likely, even in a behavioral interview, they're going to ask you about it. They're going to say, well, what's Lambda School? When you're answering this, make sure you're encompassing the things that really matter about Lambda School. Lambda School is a computer science and software engineering academy that provides immersive, hands-on curriculum. So you're showing them that I've been doing this for 7 months, like literally full-time, 40 plus hours a week, hands-on coding, hands-on learning curriculum, focusing on computer science, software engineering, and web development. It's important to let them know that you focus on computer science because a lot of these programs and the stigma out there about programs like Lambda is that they don't teach algorithms, data structures, computer science fundamentals. You want to make sure that you're telling your interview, like, I learned all that. This was like higher education. I've been doing this for 7 months. It's basically been a full-time job. So explain it that way. You guys, it was really hard work to get through Lambda. So you try to explain it in a way that's not like, it was just some side program that I did to learn some coding. Like, you don't want to explain it that way. Give it the value that you got out of it. So that's how you would explain Lambda School. And they're probably going to ask you about this in probably every interview that you do. Okay, so another thing to be cognizant about is that, so even though I'm telling you guys, use the STAR method, you're going to use your past, present, future, be careful about rambling. One of the biggest mistakes that you can make in an interview is trying to answer a question and then when you get stuck, you just start using filler words. You start saying, or I think, or like. Those are filler words. It's going to happen because we're human beings. We use those words all the time. I say those words all the time. Try to limit that though. If you ever get stuck, take a deep breath, gather your thoughts, and then continue talking. You're trying to answer these questions as directly as possible. Listen to your interviewer. Listen to the questions they're asking. Only answer the question that they are asking. Don't start going into multiple different tangents about crazy stuff. They're going to be making sure that you're answering their exact questions. So again, if you get stuck and you feel like you're starting to ramble, stop talking, take a deep breath. It's okay. It's okay to do that. In your mind, it's going to feel like that break was like an hour long. Like that silence was just an hour long. It's really not that bad. It's a quick little break to gather your thoughts and then continue your answer. It's going to be really valuable. So this also works kind of different ways as well. In a behavioral interview, you definitely want to do that. You don't want to just keep rambling and talking. In the technical interview, it's a little bit different because you're basically writing out code most of the time, or you're trying to like figure out a solution. That in that situation, you should be talking out your thought process. It's a little bit different, but we'll get kind of to the tech stuff later. Just remember, in a behavioral interview, if you get stuck and you feel like you're starting to get flustered and starting to say like just random stuff, and you're like, oh my God, I'm rambling, and you know when you're rambling, you can feel it. Take a deep breath, gather your thoughts, continue talking. It's that easy. Okay, so Another thing, and you guys are going to hear me say this over and over and over again, especially right before we do any kind of like capstone defense stuff, anything, anytime that you have to say a negative, you're always trying to keep the vibe of your interview really positive. But sometimes they're going to structure questions so that you have to kind of give a negative answer, like a problem, an obstacle that you faced, a weakness. Again, follow up with a positive. If it's a problem, tell them how you fixed it. If it's an obstacle, tell them how you overcame it. If it's a weakness, that's okay. Tell them how you are going to fix it. Or you can always use the weakness that's not really a weakness answer. We'll practice this in our mock behavioral interviews, but always try to keep the vibe positive. You never want to talk trash about your employers. You never want to talk trash about anything or be anything other than positive. Like negative answers, sometimes are just going to happen. As long as you follow up with a positive, that's okay. Questions for your interviewer. So the worst part about being an interviewer is when you have somebody, you've kind of gone through all of your questions, you ask them at the end, and you're talking at least for 30 minutes to this person. You've been kind of explaining things to them, talking to them. The very end, you're like, okay, cool. Do you have any questions? And then they say no. That is a huge, huge mistake. So make sure you have 3 questions, even if they're not, even if at the very end of that conversation, they've already kind of answered everything, still ask your 3 questions. You want to make sure that you're asking at least 1 to 3 questions for your interviewer, because they sat there and they took the time to talk to you, and they're going to feel like you didn't hear anything that they said, or were not paying attention, or don't care if you don't ask any questions. So that's why you want to do your research beforehand. It's always good to ask questions about any kind of like upcoming projects that you found on their page. Like, oh, I noticed you guys are trying to, go mobile. How's that going for you? Like anytime you can bring in the fact that you've done research on the company, that's always a plus. Or you can ask more basic questions. If you get stuck, again, ask about the team dynamics. Like, so for this team that I would potentially be joining, like, how does the team dynamics work? Is there like any kind of like, is there a lead? How many people are on the team? You can always go that route. Ask about the team. And again, like maybe you have some of your own questions that are more personal to you. So if you really care about diversity in the workplace, do you guys have any kind of like diversity program set up? Anything like that? Just always have questions. Make sure you ask questions at the end. And then again, because if you don't, it's going to be like, okay, cool. I just spent this whole 30 minutes to an hour talking to you and you don't have anything to say. Like it will be not a good thing. Make sure you thank everyone for their time. Sometimes you're going to have panel type interviews. Make sure you thank everyone. Again, ask questions. Make a mental note of next steps. So usually they'll tell you during the interview, like, okay, next steps, like this person will contact you for next steps, blah, blah, blah. Make a mental note. Don't forget what they tell you. But either way, follow up with whoever you talk to about scheduling that first interview. Make sure you're asking them, hey, what are next steps? Again, you guys, follow up is key. Being persistent is key. Follow up with them, ask them what the next steps are. Ask questions about the next steps, especially if it's going to be a technical interview. What kind of, what kind of technical interview? Is it a take-home project? Is it an assessment? What kind of questions are you guys going to be asking? Be as specific as possible. And if they don't know, they can find out for you. So make sure you're asking questions at the end. Make sure you thank everyone. Try to get their contact information to follow up with people. Again, persistence is key. So some common questions, and we're going to go over these actually for the mock behavioral interview, and I'm going to send this to you guys. So you guys actually have some time to kind of gather your answers and try to figure out, what kind of answers you want to say and practice them before our actual mock behavioral practice that we're going to have you guys do. But these are just some common questions, and not all of these are going to actually relate to engineering. Sometimes they'll just say, tell me about yourself, tell me about yourself without the engineering portion. The strengths and weaknesses will probably get brought up. Anytime that you have worked in a team environment, they're going to ask you about team dynamics. Again, even if you hated all of your teammates for a group project, you never want to say that. You never want to say anything negative. And then the future question, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? All of these questions can be very customized to whoever you're talking to, whatever company is you're talking to. So you definitely want to do your research, bring up questions that are going to wow them, like, oh, they actually checked out our page, they did their research. But these are just some common questions that you're probably going to be asked in a behavioral setting. So technical interviews. So technical interviews can, again, be various type of different things. You're going to get coding assessments, you're going to get like Hackerronk assessments, you're going to get take-home projects. Everyone's going to get something different. At some point, though, everyone's going to have to do a technical interview. It's pretty rare that they'll bring you on for any type of like technical job without having, like, I guess, check your technical skills, because they can't necessarily bring you on as an engineer if they don't know if you can actually do the things they need you to do. So for the most part, you're going to have some type of technical interview. Usually these are a little bit longer, so prepare yourself for that. Again, ask questions. If they do set you up for a technical interview, ask questions. What kind of interview is it going to be? Is it going to be more than one person? Is it a whiteboard type interview? And if they don't know, they can find out for you, and they want to help you. Most of the time you're working with a recruiter who's trying to get this job filled, so the more information they give you, the better. Then they'll offer that person, whoever, that job, and then they don't have to worry about it anymore. So they're trying to help you as much as they can. So some different ways to prepare for a technical interview. Most of the time, you guys, for technical interviews, 100%, you're going to have Lambda Labs first off the bat. Like, that's going to be helping you tremendously. You're going to be practicing with Brian. He's going to be bringing you into labs, doing mock tech interviews. I'm sure some of you have actually already done that. They're not super fun most of the time, but they're super valuable. And right now you guys are kind of green doing these, so it's okay if you're making mistakes or you don't know how to answer certain things. That's what we're here to do. Practice with Brian, practice in labs. But some other tips outside of that to practice. So make sure, again, you're doing research on the company. Anytime that you can see like what type of tech stack they're using, practice it. If they're using a MERN stack, better. That's even better. But if they have something in their job description that you don't necessarily know, study up on it. Try to get some like refresher courses on it, because they're probably going to have that somewhere in the tech interview. Even if it's like PHP or like Ruby, something that you guys hate doing, if it's in the job description, they're probably going to ask you about it. So make sure you study up on it. You kind of know at least some of the ins and outs. Get on GitHub, try to study their code. Not all companies are going to have their projects and everything on GitHub, but sometimes you can find it and you can kind of actually study their code and see what kind of projects they're doing. That's always going to be helpful. Do a tutorial. So again, if you find a certain type of tech that they're using, tech stack that they're using, you've actually never heard of it, go do an online tutorial, go through Udacity. Ask in our forum, ask in general channel. A lot of people in Lambda School have worked in different technologies that are not necessarily what we teach here. They could possibly help you. A lot of our instructors have worked on technologies that, you know, you may not be taught at Lambda, but you may have to use in an interview. So always feel free to ask staff and the alumni and your peers. If they do, so again, this is if a company has, a lot of you ask me like, well, in the job search, like I can do like 5 out of the 10 of these things. That's okay. Absolutely still apply. As long as you have 50% of what they're looking for, I would still apply. The other half of it is, okay, so what are the things that you don't have? Start studying on those things. Start practicing with those things. The other route that you go, if you're ever asked, and this is going to work in your capstone defense too, because sometimes you're just going to get stuck on a question. You're like, I don't remember how to do that. Always try to relate to what you do know. So if they ask you about Ruby, you can say, well, actually, you know, I didn't use Ruby on the back end ever, but we do learn Python. It's very similar. I don't know if it's actually similar. You guys, like, don't quote me on that. But what I'm trying to say is that try to use something that's conceptually similar to what you don't know, if that makes sense. So you're always trying to, again, keep the interview positive. You never want to say, well, I don't know how to do that. That's a negative. You don't want to do that. And even if you do, if that's your first answer, you're like, dang, I don't know why I just said that. You can say, but I'm actually taking some courses to learn that and to teach myself that right now. So always follow up with a positive if you go negative route. Again, that's going to be important. But again, like you guys, a lot of these core technologies are very similar in the way they're structured. So if they ever ask you about something and you're just like, I have never touched that in my life, try to relate it to something that you have worked with. And then you're hyping up your tech skills. Again, this is what I do know, and this is what I can do with it. And again, so in behavioral interviews, you're always trying to avoid rambling. So if you get stuck, you take a pause, a deep breath, stop talking, gather your thoughts, and then continue to talk. In a technical interview, it's the opposite. So technical interviews, if you get stuck like whiteboarding, if you're just like talking out a solution, it's always better to actually say what's on your mind, because they at least will know like where you're trying to get. And most of the time they'll try to help you. They'll be like, oh, I see what you're trying to do, but that's like, we actually want you to do this. And they'll kind of help you out a little bit. But even then, like, they're trying to see your thought process. So even if you get the solution completely wrong, if your thought process was in the right place, that's always a good sign. They're like, oh, okay, well, they didn't get the solution quite right, but they were heading that way and they were doing the right thing to get there. So talk out your answers, your technical answers, technical solutions. Anytime you're whiteboarding, you want to try to talk out loud to see, it helps. It'll help you kind of gather your thoughts. It'll help you, especially if the interviewer is like, oh, actually, no, that's not what I wanted you to do, or whatever the case may be. So make sure you're talking your answers out loud in technical interviews, always. A software developer at Groupon said that. It's his advice too, or hers. So technical interview practice, there are so many different resources out there to practice technical interviews for free. So Preamp, Udacity, TripleByte, LeetCode. The TripleByte one I've heard is very hard, but if you can get through that one, that can open up a lot of doors for you. CoderByte, there's a whole technical interview prep article on Reddit that I share with everyone. I really like it. Computer science practice, a lot of you, that's kind of your not super strong point. So practice Geeks for Geeks. Your Lambda instructors, again, alumni, Lambda instructors, your peers, ask the network for help, you guys. Like, they will help you. We're here to help you get a job. Your instructors want you to succeed. Your peers want you to succeed. Alumni wants you to succeed. So they will help you. There's also some paid resources. So Interview Cake, you can pay for like additional mock interviews or whatever. Hackerronk, same thing. I think Hackerronk, so there was a 14-day free trial. I don't know if that's still active, but a lot of companies use Hackerronk. I know VMware, my past company, used to use Hackerronk for all of our technical assessments. So get familiar with it if you can, because a lot of companies will use Hackerronk for their technical assessments. Cool. Before we move on to offer negotiations, are there any questions on interview stuff? And remember, ask me out loud because I don't have Slack open or my chat.
Would you say there's a certain type of I shouldn't say whiteboarding, but certain type of technical question which seems to be most common? Is it, say, whiteboarding or Hackerrank or?
I would say the most common one that I've seen is the hacker, like a Hackerrank type of assessment. Like, they'll actually have an assessment put together that they send you, and before you can even like meet with anyone on site, they'll send you like an assessment, like a Hackerrank assessment or a company like Hackerrank. And then as soon as you finish it, they have your answers. Like, they track everything. That's probably the most common one I've seen. For bigger companies, they'll definitely do more of a whiteboard style. For VMware, for instance, we had multiple steps for our technical process. So because they were a large company, they would have you, before you could even meet with anyone, you did a behavioral interview. Right after the behavioral interview, you were sent a tech assessment through Hackerrank. If you did well on that, then they brought you in to do a whiteboard interview. So some companies will have multiple steps, especially on the engineering side, just because there's a lot of competition and they have to just, they have to see who's the best. So sometimes there'll be multiple steps, but for the most part, the most common one that I've seen is like just an assessment. Like, they'll send you an assessment and you do it, and then you'll like have a certain amount of time. Usually it's like an hour to get your solutions, and then you send it back to them, or they'll just track it. Like, you'll just be done with it and they'll track your answers. Any other questions?
I had one question. It might be a little silly, but how would we dress for the interview? Would it be more professional or like business casual, or?
So, rule of thumb, everyone, for dressing for interviews, you always want to dress a step up of what their normal dress attire is. So even if a company's dress attire is jeans and t-shirts, you want to wear business casual. If their dress attire is business casual, then you want to wear business professional. Business casual is basically slacks or like khakis with a polo for men, or maybe even a button down for men. Casual for women, you can wear pants, you can wear a dress. You're not wearing flip-flops, you're not wearing a tank top, anything like that. Even if that's their dress code at work, you're dressing to impress. As silly as that sounds, you always want to dress a step up of what their normal dress code is. And you'll know this because you're going to ask your interviewer or the recruiter, whoever's setting up your interview, so what's the dress attire for this company, or what's the dress attire for the interview? Usually they'll say, oh, we just wear jeans and t-shirts. Like, it's okay if you dress casually. That's a test. So don't do that. You're trying to dress a step up from what they usually wear. If she says, oh, it's business casual here, then you want to wear a suit. It's business professional. You're always trying to dress a step up of whatever the normal dress code is for that company. It's just rule of thumb. And even if it's just the one time that you're going to be dressing like that for the interview, and you're going to know, like, okay, if I get this job, it's more jeans and t-shirts, but you're still trying to impress your interviewer. And it's only one step above. So if the company is very casual, you don't want to wear a suit to the interview. You want to just business casual. If you want to wear a suit, you can. It's whatever you're comfortable in at that point. But for the most part, it's a step up. So business casual if it's a very casual company, business professional if it's a business casual type company.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? No? Okay. I'll do a Q&A after this presentation too, in case anyone missed anything. So job offers and salary negotiations. Job offer negotiations are my jam. 100% when you get your offer, because you will get an offer sometime soon, you need to get with Courtney or myself, whoever your career coach is. We will help you negotiate your salary. A lot of people are uncomfortable negotiating salaries. Some people love doing it. But we should be helping you do that because both of us have been doing it for a while. I love offer negotiations. It's literally my jam. I love getting people more money or like more benefits. So please come to your career coach when you get your offer. That's like the main thing that I want to tell you guys about offer negotiations. But some tips. It's actually not all about the Benjamins. So for the most part, when you're negotiating a salary, most of you guys are going to try to get a little bit more money on the front end, but it's not always about that. Sometimes you need to negotiate your benefits, your title. There's so many other things. Like you need to look at the whole offer as a whole to negotiate. So it is mostly about the Benjamins, but not all the time. Always negotiate. This goes back to what I said earlier. Never take an offer right off the bat. You never want to be forced to accept an offer right off the bat. Even if they're kind of pressuring you to, tell them that you need time. You want to do this for a couple of reasons. Always negotiate no matter what, because you're going to put them on their toes. Most of the time, these companies are expecting you to negotiate. Most companies, I would say like 95% of companies that offer you something expect you to negotiate. So they'll usually try to lowball you a little bit to give themselves some room to negotiate. So keep that in mind. They're prepared for you to negotiate. So don't just be like, yeah, I'll take it, because they're ready for you to negotiate. They potentially were going to be offering you more money. So always negotiate. Always try to give yourself some time to negotiate. Don't let them pressure you on negotiating right off the bat. That's not the way it should work. That's not the way it works. That's not a professional setting. If they're like, no, we need you to say yes or no right now. If you get that answer at all, you can say, actually, I need to speak to my family and my friends, and then I'll get back to you. Or whatever you want to say, but always make sure they're giving you time to negotiate, or at least look at the offer and not just accept a verbal offer. Okay, so to prepare for an offer negotiation, and these are just some tips that have worked in the past for other people. So never reveal too early how much you accept or box yourself in with a specific number. A lot of you have told me, so a lot of applications, they'll sometimes ask you for what salary you're expecting, or in an interview, they'll ask you for what salary you're expecting. A couple different ways to get around this. For the application, if you can only put in one number, so you can't put in a range, then you want to take your walkaway rate. So if your walkaway rate is 70K, like that's your walkaway salary. My walkaway salary, I can't take anything under 70K, add 10K to that. And that's going to be what you put in if you can only put in one number for your application. If they allow you to put a range, you always want to still add 10K. So now you're at 80K to 100K or 95K. So you're always giving them a range of 15 to 20K, a big range, because you never know where their heads are at. So you always want to give them kind of a bigger range and also cushion yourself just in case they're trying to lowball you. So always add at least 10K to your walkaway rate. The other way to get around this is, so if they're asking you face-to-face in an interview, so what are you expecting as far as offers, or what are you expecting as far as salary? You can say, well, it's not just about the salary. I want to look at the opportunity as a whole. I'd probably be looking closer to market rate. And just leave it at that. This is a rule in sales and in recruiting. The first person who talks loses. So if you're the first person, if you're like, yeah, I'm fine with 60K, they're going to give you 60K. But potentially they could have given you 80K. So you never want to box yourself in with a number ever. So to get around that, you can say, I'm just really looking for market rate, or I'm not comfortable sharing that at the moment. I want to hear about the whole opportunity. And it's okay if you say that. Like, they'll respect that. It's not like, oh, okay, look at you. Like, they won't think that. They're just trying to get an answer out of you so that they can potentially lowball you. That's the way offer negotiations work. You never have to answer that question. So do your research before the interview. Look on Glassdoor. So to know your market rate, I always use Glassdoor. Some people don't really necessarily like Glassdoor, but I think it's pretty accurate. So Glassdoor will tell you exactly where the median or the average is for your city, like your exact location. And I always just do software developer, software engineer. Sometimes depending on the title, those salaries are different. So keep in mind what your job description, what your job title would potentially be for this role. If it's a front-end developer, look up front-end developer title for Glassdoor. But typically I would say mid-market rate, like on average for every city, I would say is around like 65 to 80K, depending on where you are. It's going to be different in everyone's different cities. But always know where your mid-market rate is, where that market rate is for whatever potentially job title that you're going to get. You never want to go into this not knowing, because what if they're like, mid-market or market rate for you is 85K, but then you don't know that, so you're going in with 60K. Like, no, you are at this potential level. You should be making this potential salary. So always know your market rate. Glassdoor is a really good one. You can literally Google it, and it's probably going to take you to Glassdoor, but I'm sure there's other websites for that too. But this goes back to focusing on a realistic salary. So if your market rate is 85K, and you know that like this company is probably going to offer you something around there, don't try to go in asking for like 100 to 120K. Like, you don't ever want to cushion yourself that much, because then you're going to look greedy. Try to stick to your market rate. Always give yourself some cushion, about 5 to 10K cushion from your walkaway rate. And then if they ever ask you for a range, 15 to 20K range is what you're looking at. But you don't ever want to come across as being really greedy and give them like some unrealistic salary that they're not going to be able to give you. That goes into my next one. So again, this is gonna help you to know what the market rate is, this is gonna depend on the company, you guys, too. So if it's a really small startup, most of the time they're not gonna be able to offer you this giant salary. Even if your market rate is 85K, if they only have a certain budget, because they're a small startup, they're only gonna be able to offer you so much. So keep in mind what kind of company you're looking at. If it's Google, you know that they can give you money. Obviously, it's Google. If it's a smaller startup or like a mid-sized kind of mom and pop shop, just be wary of who you're talking to, of the company you're working with. Sometimes they just literally can't. They have a budget. They can't go over it. And most of the time they'll let you know in that situation. And then again, look at the whole package. It's not just about money. It can be about vacation time, title. It can be about the job description, anything. There's so many different things that go into the offer, which is why Courtney and I are here to help you. Please come to us for offer negotiations. We can help you look at the whole offer and make sure that you're getting the best deal out of it. So not just on the money side, but everything included. Again, so don't make a salary pitch too early. This is, it's hard because some applications will ask you for a salary. Again, try to cushion yourself at least 10K, whatever your walkaway rate is, if that's the case on an application. And then in some interviews they'll ask you, but don't ever just jump into it saying like, I want this certain amount of money. You always want to get around that question. So you can always say, again, I'm not comfortable sharing that information. I really just want to see, I kind of want to get through the interview process, see the offer as a whole, see the company as a whole. Or you can just say, I'm really looking for market rate. I'm more interested in the opportunity, but I'm looking for market rate. However you want to say it, you never have to give that answer. That's not required for you to tell them what your salary is. But going back to having a realistic expectations, you want to make sure that the company doesn't think you only care about money. So that's where it comes into play. We're I want to see the opportunity as a whole. I don't just care about money. Even if you do, don't say that. Because they don't want to, they want to make sure you're going to be there long-term, that you don't just care about what kind of money you're going to be getting. Because that means you could ditch them, and whoever's paying you the most, that's where you're going to go. It's not always about that. So don't decline the offer too quickly. So you don't want to accept too quickly. You don't want to decline too quickly. Even if the verbal offer is 40K and it's 20K under what you even asked for, say, thank you, I want to take a look at this. I need to speak to my friends and family. Again, a lot of times companies will lowball you knowing that you're going to negotiate. So don't decline too quickly either, because they already in their mind are okay, we're going to see if they take this right off the bat, because then they don't have to even negotiate with you. They don't have to give you anything else if you say yes. But you don't want to decline either. You want to make sure that you're coming back to them with your plan. Okay, well, that's a little low. I need to be closer to this with this and this and this. Again, so don't decline too quickly. Don't offer too quick, or don't accept too quickly. For the counter offer. So you have your offer in hand. You're taking a look at it. You're okay, these are some of the things I want to change. Try to do this all in one go. So your counter offer you should have already looked over the whole offer as a whole, not just the salary. And when you go back to them for your counter offer, you want to talk about, okay, this is where my salary needs to be closer to. I'm going to need more than that in vacation or PTO. And for this benefit, I would like to change this, or for your title. So make sure you're checking the whole thing as a whole. And when you go back to them with your counter offer, you have everything you want to change in one go. You don't want to keep going back and forth, changing different things, because that's going to get crazy and frustrating. And although I have never seen someone rescind, that's not true. I've seen someone's offer get rescinded on a contract basis because they kept going back and forth. They kept asking for more money, and they weren't even looking at anything else as part of the offer. That offer got rescinded. That's the only time I've ever seen that. So for a lot of you, you're like, well, we don't want them to like take the offer off the table. They're not going to take the offer off the table if you're being realistic, if you're working with them. But you still need to negotiate. So make sure when you go back with your counter offer, you have everything that you want to already change in mind, and you tell them that right off the bat. Don't keep going back and forth on, well, and also I want to change this, and also I want to change this. It's going to be frowned upon, and they're probably not going to work with you as easily. Again, so most of the time they'll negotiate with you. If they don't negotiate, then you need to think about this as far as like, okay, is it worth it for me to work here? And if they're not going to negotiate, does that mean that you're not worth negotiating for? So you have to know where your walkaway point is. Even if they're offering you a good salary, if the benefits are terrible and they're just refusing to negotiate with you on anything, maybe this is an offer that you have to walk away from. You have to be prepared to walk away from offers, you guys. Like, you are software engineers. You're going to have multiple opportunities once you graduate to get positions. So you have to make sure you're taking the right one. And even though a lot of you are like, no, I need to work right now, I need this offer, like I'm just going to take the first offer in hand. Please don't do that. A, come to us. We'll help you negotiate it anyways. But B, if that offer is just like terrible and they're not negotiating with you and you have a bad feeling about it, gut feelings are a real thing. If you have a bad feeling about the offer, be prepared to walk away from it. That's another main point too. Be prepared to walk away from offers. There's so many different things too that you can negotiate if it's not just about salary. Like if the company is just like, hey, like literally our budget for this role is $70K. We cannot offer you more than that. Don't take it personally either. Some of these companies, like they have their budget from the finance team. That hiring partner or that hiring manager is not necessarily the one making the budget. He or she's probably trying to offer you the most that they can give you. And that it's the finance team that's like, nope, that's our budget. Can't offer anything more than that. But that's okay. If they tell you that and they're like, hey, like, I'm really sorry, this is just the most we can offer you, that's our budget. Try to negotiate other things. Bonus structure, that's fine. I appreciate you letting me know that. In 6 months, I would like a performance review. And at that point, I would like to renegotiate my salary. That is 100% something that you can do. I've done it. So you can definitely do that if they are just telling you like, hey, at this time right now, we can't offer you anymore. And you really like this opportunity as a whole. And you're like, okay, well, let's revisit this in 6 months. Most of the time you can actually have them put that in the contract so that it has to be done. They can sometimes give you a sign-on bonus, any type of relocation bonus. If you guys are going to be relocating anywhere, please try to get a relocation bonus. You should not have to, for the most part, unless they like tell you ahead of time, like, hey, we're not relocating anyone for this role because we've got local candidates. They can for the most part relocate you. So especially the bigger companies. So make sure you're asking for relocation bonus or relocation assistance. Usually they'll try to give you kind of some money on the front end to help you with that. Everything can be negotiated as far as stock. That's stock and equity are not my strong suits, but 100% those things can be negotiated. I actually have some resources for you guys. If anyone's doing like any kind of startup offer, anything like that, a lot of times they'll be really heavy on equity and lower on salary. Equity is tricky and it's all about percentages. I have like 4 or 5 articles that I found on equity that can help you guys in that situation. It is not my strong suit because normally I'm just helping negotiate kind of all the other stuff except equity. But a lot of you, if you're going for the startup mode, it's going to be a lot of equity. So you have to know kind of the ins and outs of that and stock as well. And then again, so a lot of these companies will try to lowball you. So because they know that you're going to negotiate, they are expecting you to negotiate. Please don't think that a company is like, oh my gosh, you're negotiating. Like that's not okay. Every company most likely expects you to negotiate. That's why they try to lowball you a little bit most of the time so that they have wiggle room to meet you halfway. They will meet you halfway as long as you negotiate with them. They will give you something as long as you negotiate with them. And again, please come to Courtney and myself. We will help you do that. Everything is negotiable. Again, salary is negotiable, benefits, some benefits are not. So healthcare, dental, things like that. The actual amount that you have to pay is not necessarily negotiable because a lot of them have these like third-party plans that they're working with. However, if you're looking at the benefits and you're like, that is a lot of money out of pocket, you can use that to negotiate your salary. Like, hey, I realize these benefits are like way, way more expensive than what I'm used to paying. Is there any way that you can cushion that on the salary side of things to help me kind of compensate for that? So benefits in that way are very negotiable. PTO is negotiable. Title, a lot of people don't think about title, but title is important because whatever title it is that you're taking for this role is going to affect you directly in your next role. So if they're trying to give you like a junior entry level title, you can just say, can I actually just have like a software developer title? Because then potentially in your next role, you'll be a mid-level software developer. And usually that title gives you a little bit more on the front end as far as salary. So title is absolutely negotiable as well. Don't forget about that one. Negotiating with confidence. So you're definitely going to have a career coach helping you negotiate. So that's going to be somebody in your corner helping you get confidence. But do your research, know how much you're worth, strategize. So this says secure multiple offers. You can't just go out and secure multiple offers. For the most part, you're going to get like maybe one offer at a time, most of you. If you have multiple offers, 100% use that. But the other companies, the companies that are giving you these offers, they don't know if you have multiple offers or not. So you can always say like, hey, I know you guys offered me 75K. I'm actually expecting an offer from another company closer to 85K. Is there any way you guys can like meet me in the middle or get me a little bit closer to that? They don't know who you have offers from. So that's okay. You can use that as part of your offer negotiation, even if you are not expecting another offer at all. The 100% you can use that. And negotiating. So consider big picture. Make sure you're seeing the offer as a whole. You don't just negotiate salary, you're negotiating the whole offer. So remember, keep that in mind. You get in life what you have the courage to ask for, by the OG, Oprah Winfrey. Everyone gets money and better benefits most of the time. So here's just some offer negotiation resources. There's a whole video about it. This guy's really good. I like this video a lot. But again, make sure you're coming to us, Courtney and myself, whoever your career coach is. We will 100% help you negotiate your offer, but also make sure you're getting with your friends and family. That's going to be important, you guys. Like, it's sometimes for most of you, you guys have family or friends that you're trying to also keep in mind. So make sure they know about your offer, and they'll probably most likely help you too. Get their thoughts. Use your gut feeling. Gut feelings are 100% a real thing. Even if the company is like offering you this great amount and you just have a bad feeling about it, check that gut feeling. Try to figure out where that's coming from, because sometimes you just have to walk away from offers. We've seen people at Lambda do it. It's just the way it is. Sometimes you just have to walk away. It's not the end of the world. Know your value. You don't want to go somewhere where your value's not valued. So again, trust your gut feeling. Get with your career coach. Get with your instructors. Ask people what they think. We're only here to help you get the best offer possible. Cool. I'm going to get back here and take some questions. Any questions on offer or interview if you thought of one?
I have a couple if I can.
Go ahead.
So you said earlier, don't take the first offer and kind of be prepared to turn people down. In my case, I'm really gunning for a job as fast as I can. And it's not advised to take that first job, as you say, but I just kind of want to get like a second opinion on it, because I have, I can't remember who you were talking to. One of the instructors was saying something along the lines of, it's a good practice to try and take the first job, especially when you're just starting out. Is that considered like an odd piece of advice to be giving, or
no? Okay.
At least
so
from them.
When I said I didn't say don't take the first job. I said don't just accept the first offer given, meaning you should negotiate your offer. So if it's your first job, if it's the first offer you got, that doesn't mean don't take it. That means you still need to negotiate that offer. What I'm saying is you don't want to accept, even if it's the first offer you got and you're like strapped. Listen, you guys, we get it. You guys are in this program for a long time. A lot of you were not able to work during this time. You got to pay bills. We 100% get it. But that doesn't mean you should accept that first amount or offer that they give you. Again, most companies are going to try to lowball you a little bit, and you can always get something out of the company. Trust me. So in that situation, absolutely, if it's your first job offer and it's a good offer, go for it, accept it, but still try to negotiate. So I'm not saying walk away from the first offer, period. I'm saying you should always still negotiate your offer no matter what, even if it's your first offer, even if it's you are strapped for cash, whatever the case may be, you can still negotiate. Keep that in mind.
Gotcha. That was actually my bad. I wrote down my question wrong. I wrote it down as jobs, and you actually said offer. I put it down as offer, but then I put job later on. I wrote the job
You're
part.
fine. Just remember, and Kevin, you can use your career coach, aka me. So I will help you negotiate your offer.
My other question was, when you're negotiating and you bring up that initial offer of like, oh, hey, we're offering you 75K. And I mention, oh, well, I've got another offer from another company at like 85,000. Is there a way I can get near that? What if they ask me, oh, what other company is it? And I want to come off like a complete jerk by saying, oh, well, you can't ask me that question. Like, how do I respond to that effectively without coming off rude?
You can say, well, I'm not comfortable sharing that at this time. And I really do. I think this company is the good place for me. I really like this opportunity. However, I mean, I am looking at closer to 85. So is there any way you can get closer to that? You never have to answer any specific question around other offers that you have. So you can just say, to answer that question, you can say, well, I'm not comfortable sharing that at this time. However, I really do appreciate this offer. I really do like the company. But I still have to keep my family, my friends in mind, my personal interests. So is it possible for you guys to get any closer to 85K? Throw it back on them. 100% throw it back on them. Put the ball back in their court. Cool?
Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just commenting. Had it lit. Your music was on, so.
Okay. Not my music, but thanks anyways. Whoever's music that was, Devin likes it, just FYI. Okay, any questions on interviews or offers? Any more questions?
Yeah. The concept of a signing bonus seems odd. Not sure how to, like, if they didn't offer a signing bonus, say, and potentially you're considering countering with that related to, they didn't offer the salary I want. Or, I don't know, I guess just the concept of a signing bonus seems odd to be looking for a signing bonus.
So you don't just straight up ask for a sign-on bonus. If they're going to offer you sign-on bonus, that's one thing. But if they didn't offer it to you, you don't just straight up ask for one. It's not required for them to give you a sign-on bonus. The sign-on bonus comes into play when you have to relocate and they're like, well, we don't offer relocation for this role. Is it possible to get a sign-on bonus then on the front end so that I can be compensated for relocating or at least get some relocation assistance? So that's one instance where a sign-on bonus comes into play. The other instance is, again, going back to benefits. So if you're working or looking at this offer and you're like, these benefits are outrageously expensive, you can say, hey, I definitely get it. You guys can't change your benefit company or whatever, but is it possible to get a sign-on bonus to kind of compensate on the front end for these benefits? So you're only using a sign-on bonus for when there's something that they potentially like can't offer you. So like relocation, if they're like, we don't offer relocation for this role, that's fine. Is it possible to get a sign-on bonus? But a sign-on bonus is not something that is required as part of an offer. So if they give you this offer and there's no sign-on bonus, you can't just be like, well, I need a sign-on bonus. Like you have to have a reason to ask for a sign-on bonus. The main reasons are if they don't offer relocation and you have to relocate, you can ask for a sign-on bonus. Because you guys, for the finance portion of this, like it all depends on like what kind of code they put it in as. Like even if they can't offer you relocation, they can use that sign-on, like whatever amount of money they have as a sign-on bonus, and it makes sense for finance. And the same thing for benefits. Like, feel like, hey, these benefits are just really expensive. Is there any way I can get like, some kind of sign-on bonus in the front end to compensate that? So those are kind of the main reasons that you get a sign-on bonus. Or sometimes they'll just offer you a sign-on bonus. Like that happens too. And you can negotiate so if they do offer a sign-on bonus, you can negotiate a sign-on. If they're like, cool, we're going to give you a 1K sign-on bonus, you can say, well, I appreciate that. Can you get closer to a 5K sign-on bonus? This other company I was interviewing for was offering a 5K sign-on bonus. Or like they're offering this higher salary, and because your salary is a little bit lower, can I get a little bit more as a sign-on bonus? But that's only if they offer you a sign-on bonus right off the bat. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, anybody else? Y'all, mute your, okay, thank you. Everyone should be muted unless you're asking a question. I'm hearing some background music. Not bad, but a little distracting.
Hey, what do you mean by benefits being expensive?
So you'll see in some of the different offers that you get. So they're always going to extend their offer. They'll show you like what your start date, the salary that they're offering, but then they'll also give you a benefits breakdown. And usually it's like a breakdown of this is how much it's going to cost out of pocket. So, and it's different, right? If you're like getting individual benefits, it's usually a little bit cheaper. If you're getting family benefits, it's a little bit more expensive. And they usually try to give you a couple different options. But if you're noticing these out-of-pocket benefits, like for the most part, and this is something that you're also going to have to research, like how much are benefits in my area, because it's very much depending on location. But if you're doing your research and you're like, okay, benefits for a single person should cost somewhere around like $20 a month out of my paycheck. But these benefits are like $100 a month out of your paycheck. That's something that you can be like, hey, because they can't change the amount of money that they're charging you for benefits. Like the company can't change that. They're already working with their insurance company to do that. However, you can say, hey, I'm kind of seeing that these benefits that you guys offer, like your medical and your dental is a little bit more expensive out of pocket. Is there any way I can get, like a little bit more on the front end on my salary to help compensate that? So that's what I mean by negotiating benefits. You can't actually negotiate how much you're paying for your medical, dental, vision, whatever they offer you. But you can negotiate like, hey, can I get more on the front end because these benefits are expensive? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got you. So it's usually when there's like a health insurance and stuff like that, it's not something you can just say, oh, I'm not interested. It's like, oh, can I maybe be compensated a little more because of this disparity?
Exactly. And you can actually research how much benefits on average are for like each like medical, because it's going to just depend on what company your company is using. Like it could be any different company. It could be like United Healthcare. It could be Aetna. So just depending on what company they're using, the rates will vary. So just make sure you're doing your research and you know like how much each company usually offers in that area. But either way, like that part of it, you can't negotiate. You can just negotiate the benefits being too much out of pocket, because they're going to charge you that no matter what.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? Anybody?